City of Bisbee, County of Cochise, and State of Arizona that will be held on Monday, April 27th, 2020 through possibly Thursday, April 30th, 2020, starting at 5:30 p.m. each night at the City of Bisbee's Council Chambers, 915 South Doverville Road, Bisbee, Arizona. Ms. Coronado, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Pro Tem Louis Pollock.
Here.
Councilmember Joni Giacomino.
Here.
Councilmember Bill Higgins.
Here.
Mayor David M. Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Leslie Jones.
Here.
Councilmember Joan Hanson.
Here.
Councilmember Anna Klein.
Here.
City staff, Teresa Coleman, City Manager. Ashley Coronado, City Clerk. Carrie Bagley, Finance Director. Joelle Landers, Personnel Director. Albert E. Chavez, Police Chief. George Castillo, Fire Chief.
Thank you, ma'am. We have one item, of course, and that is presentation and discussion of the proposed tentative budget for the fiscal year 2020-2021 and possible direction to staff for changes to be made prior to formal approval. And this is going to be presented by our City Manager, Teresa Coleman, and our Finance Director, Carrie Bagley. Before we start, for those in the audience, it is the city manager's, within the city manager's job description to present the council with a balanced budget. The council's job, and one of the most important jobs of the council, is to actually go through that budget and to then pass that budget. And so it's sometimes asked why we're involved in this, and in fact, that's one of the most important jobs that we have. So that's why we're involved in this. So having said that, the game plan is to go through the budget starting at the first, and we hope to be able to get through the fire department tonight. So that's our goal, is to get through the fire department. And if for some reason we get bogged down, then we will recess until tomorrow. And we're going to have to be at it as long as it takes. But hopefully, the finance director and the city manager and the department heads have done a great job in working with what they have and making lemonades out of lemons. And with that, I will start by indicating that our first item will be, of course, our income, and that is Ms. Coleman and Ms. Bagley.
Thank you, Council. So we did have a few questions ahead of time. One of them was related to city sales tax. We did include $230,000, which would be a portion of a potential new 1% sales tax. So that is included in that budget figure. Otherwise, the tax revenue did come from the notice that we received from the state of Arizona. So we got our state shared revenue notice, and those figures are based on that information, as well as the property tax, which is based upon the notice that we received from Cochise County.
I have one thing that I neglected to indicate. Do we have any emails from citizens?
We do.
We have two.
Are we going to be discussing those during the specific times that those relate to? Does that make sense?
Okay, yes.
Okay, as in if they're about the mayor and council's budget, perhaps we should wait for the mayor and council
Okay,
rather than jumping around.
yes.
And I did indicate that while people are watching this, it is being live streamed. While people are watching this, if they have questions, they can email. And we will ask those questions as we go.
Yes.
So I want to have as much citizen input as they want to provide under the current restraints that we're having to work under. So I apologize for interrupting.
So there is a comment from Donna Pulling in regard to revenue. Taxes Why does the budget show increased income in city, state sales and property tax of $324,500 over last year's budget? This seems overreaching in the current condition of our local state economy. Mayor Smith stated the city sales tax revenues have down since September due to not so prosperous tourism season, and certainly down since February due to virus. Intergovernmental. How can we have increased income in urban revenue sharing of $69,360? Has the percentage changed or business population grown? 3, ambulance fees. Why $242,500 increase in ambulance income from what the last 2 years have been averaging, especially after last month's vote giving all Tucson ambulance runs to Arizona Ambulance, a private company based in Sierra Vista? 4, under miscellaneous revenues, earned interest. Why is all the earned interest going into the general fund? Interest earned 2017-18 was $5,600. Interest earned 2021, $36,000. Shouldn't the percentage of the interest earned from the fire insurance money be transferred to capital improvement to rebuild City Hall? That's all I have for revenue.
Okay.
Do you want me to, do you want us to address these
Sure.
one at a time? Okay.
Please.
All right. Well, we did talk about the city, state sales, and property tax increase. So those are based on, like I said, the additional, a portion of the additional sales tax. It would be in effect for 3 months of this budget. And then also the figures that we receive from the states.
And should, let's assume for a minute that we do not get that 1 cent sales tax. What is the impact on the budget then?
That would be the $230,000 impact.
So that puts us approximately,
268,567.
okay, $269,000 in the red.
Can you do me a favor? Will you move your microphone back just a little bit, see if that helps? You're really muffled. I don't know, it's just, sorry.
I'm muffling.
Yeah. It's just, well, you're real bass.
That's muffling.
No, you're real bass, it's real bass and it seems to be reverberating. I just wanted to see if it's
Okay.
okay. Thanks.
Check.
Urban revenue
Yeah,
sharing.
that's the same. Urban revenue sharing, that's also provided by the state. All those state shared revenues come from the state. They're not numbers that we come up with ourselves.
Ambulance fees. So we actually did budget significantly less than was budgeted last year. We do have an opportunity to take additional ambulance runs. If one ambulance isn't on its way to Tucson, then we could pick up runs that bring in more revenue with less mileage. But again, we could pick up runs to Sierra Vista. And Chief, did we have something else figured into?
So the increase that we.
This is-
Oh,
The
yes,
rate
we
increase?
applied for an increase to the state. Yes, thank you.
When will we know if we get that increase?
It's supposed to be like 4 to 6 months before they make a decision, and that was submitted in, I think, January or February. So hopefully before the beginning of the new year, the new fiscal year.
And interest income.
So that interest income is all pretty much with, insurance reimbursement is sitting in the bank account and it's earning interest. You know, it's all sitting in the general fund. The insurance money is sitting in the general fund, the, interest from it is sitting in the general fund. If at some point we need to use it, we move it over to the capital improvements fund.
Sure.
Yeah, and it's important that it is earmarked, but it is in the general fund.
Right, it's in the general fund under, the fund equity.
Okay. Let me ask about the Wildland Fire Services. I know that we need an engine boss. Do we have the ability to go ahead on these wildfires with like a contract engine boss like we did last time, like we did last year?
Yes, we do.
So the answer from the chief is yes. So we have somebody that we can,
Right now, we have two of our firefighters in training for engine boss, but they still need to get out with a trained engine boss. We do have that set up with the state. If one of the state employees goes with us, it's pretty much, we just pretty much pay for their meals, but if we contract it out with Fry Fire, engine boss from them, I think they get 30% of the earnings.
right? Okay. Good, yeah. Thank you, Chief. And we have the ambulance subscriptions in here, which we, as a council, will need to actually move on in the next short period of time.
Yes, it will be on your agenda for discussion May 10th.
Great.
Can I ask a question on
Yes.
that? That was one of the things that I was questioning because it is so high. Do we really think that that's a realistic number?
Excuse me. That was based off from, a lot of, residents that don't have insurance. If they owe an ambulance bill, they'll say usually can pay is about $10 or $20 a month. So that was based off from 750 customers at $10 a month. It was, just, it's a guesstimate. We could charge more and have less customers.
Okay, just what I'm asking is, do we have somebody actively out there trying to sign up people for this subscription?
We don't have anything set up at this point.
Yes, that you will discuss actually implementing a subscription at your next meeting on May 5th.
We don't have the program yet.
I thought we had already started this
No, ma'am.
last.
We talked about it and
And it never went anywhere. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
On taxes?
Revenue.
On revenue? Let me just, we are in a period here where there are a lot of unknowns. And so we have a budget that was being worked on before this current situation hit us. And so we don't know what we're going to need to be operating under. We have to make certain assumptions. The state's doing the same thing and having to make certain assumptions, and so is every city in this state, because we're all under the same guidelines of having to have a budget in at the same time. So we currently are able to recoup some of our expenses from this budget year, having to do with extraordinary expenses such as police overtime, fire overtime, things like that. But we don't know yet if the government's going to allow us to receive funds for our everyday operations that those funds that we've lost through sales tax and bed tax, particularly sales tax. So we just don't know yet. Right now, the answer is no, but our state senators are indicating and our representative that they will be putting it back in front of Congress, attempting again on the fourth stimulus package. And so we're keeping our fingers crossed, but we just don't know. So we have to operate as with what we have.
We have some questions.
Yes.
I just want to clarify, we are on page one, correct? Is it? Or
Yes.
no? Yes, okay, so, I guess I'm getting a little confused down to licensing and permits. You had budgeted for $19, $20, $60,000, and to date, as of December, I guess, we've only, got 26,887, but yet we're increasing it. Is there some reason that you were anticipating? Is that because of the fee scheduling going up, or?
Yes, and actually we'll, be at, so yes, we did increase our fee schedule
Right.
for building permits, pretty significantly, actually.
Right, but I guess my point is, if we're in December, we were only at 26, you know, is it gonna be that big of a leap? I mean, are we even close to making, I mean, that's not even what, a third of, that's a third, I
Yeah.
should say.
Yes, the thing about building and sign permits is that, they can be seasonal and they're not necessarily like the first 6 months represents the
Okay.
last 6 months.
Okay, my other question jumps down to occupational liquor licenses and liquor licenses. What's the difference between the two? And why is there such a substantial jump in the occupational liquor license? And all of a sudden, we have $1,250 for just plain old Joe Schmo liquor license?
Right, so we, are gonna change the, designation of the 10600 account to read business licenses. And then the liquor licenses will be on a separate line.
Okay.
So these are business licenses. The business license fee had not increased for 10 years in the city of Bisbee. Your new fee schedule did take the maximum 1-year increase over those 10 years. So the calculation is based on the number of businesses and taking into account the new business license fees.
Okay, so when you jump down, you have special events license. We used to be budgeted for 3,000 and now you're dropping it to 22. What happens if, let's say, you know, with the new deal, with the winter coming in, if people decide once social distancing goes away, what happens if you end up getting more? Where will that money then go? If you get 3,000 and we're only budgeted for 22.
Right, so, special events do have expenses like utilities.
Right.
So it will help cover the cost of having the additional events in, for example, the parks budget.
Plan examination fee, charges for services. You're dropping from $12,000 to $2,000. What exactly, I'm sorry, some are charges for services.
Yeah, so plan examination, is, large projects, and we haven't had large projects in the city in the last couple of years. So continuing to budget as though we were gonna have a large, subdivision or development that needed.
So 10 Town doesn't fall under that?
It already exists.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it already exists. It's not a new subdivision or a new development, a new commercial development.
Vehicle impound fees, is that something that went up to that?
Yes.
So that was that big of a.
Yeah.
Franchise fees, why is that so high when we've only realized 52,000?
Most of the companies that pay the franchise fees do it quarterly, and they're always a quarter behind. So where it said it was at 52,000, in December, right now it's over 100,000. So we're always at least a quarter behind on revenues on there.
And, pool admissions. Is that really, I mean, realistic, considering if you look at the history of the pool, they've never had that much money in. Oh, sorry. I'm just curious why that's set so high, is that just in case? And,
Well, we had 2 budget years of, historically higher numbers.
okay, and then here you get wild, fire inspection fees,
Yes, those are brand
so
new.
that still hasn't even gone into effect yet, I assume, because
Right.
it's zero.
Right,
We just passed that.
set those in your fee schedule.
So I guess, and I do have one other question though, but is there any way the next time we meet, we can have like to date? Because this is December. Then it kind of gives me, does that make sense? So I guess, well, it's not on this page, I won't ask, I'll wait. I don't think. Yeah, it is, it's on the next page. What exactly is, other revenues and, not other revenues and transfers, the GF internal services? What is that? Is that the depreciation
You
thing?
know, that's, the amounts that, come in from all the other departments, basically to cover the cost of the general fund, like IT, personnel, payroll. There's a charge in every department for general fund internal services. It's based off, the expense for the entire, all of the departments divided into the expense for each department, so it's a percentage of each department's expense. And then it's, so we take all the costs of the finance, IT, personnel, city manager, city clerk, all of those costs, and allocate it out to all the departments that use those services. For example, like the wastewater plant, if they're an enterprise fund, so if they were to completely operate on their own, they would have to hire a payroll company, an IT company, you know, all those things to do those services for them.
So do those charges from each group, company, whatever you would call it, department, thank you, are they used up? And if not, where does
Well,
that
they're
money
just
go?
all, it covers the expenses for all of those departments. So it covers the general fund department's expenses. And so, I mean, all the general fund departments that have that charge to them, it kind of cancels itself out. So it's, you know, all the departments outside of the general fund, clean mine, wastewater, sanitation, airport, those ones, it's money coming into the general fund to cover the general fund costs.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Well, on the same subject, that's 19.3% of the general fund. That's awfully high, especially if you look at the fact that most of the departments come in around 9 or 10%. So can you explain why that is so high as part of the general fund?
Other than, it was just, like I said, the cost of those general fund departments, that was the total cost of all those departments.
Okay.
And
Some of those charges from different departments are high compared to the average. So I'll address those when we get to the appropriate sections. Thank you.
Anything else?
We did have a question come
Yes.
in, from Ken Budge. Are they basing revenue on a yes vote on the 1% increase sales tax? And that was a yes. He's saying that 1% brings in around $750,000 per year.
Okay. And we had already answered that.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
I've got one more question.
Yes, ma'am?
Refresh my memory, where is our rental income coming from?
The post office.
Okay, so we are no longer then renting the spaces out under City Park, or is it something we're going to look at in the future, or what?
No, not to my understanding, we're not renting that space out, and I don't understand there's any plan to rent it in the future.
Okay, so then this is only from,
The
okay,
post office.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
What about the airport hangars?
Oh, that's in the airport fund.
Just wanted to make sure that,
Okay.
Question,
yes.
what is LLEAC revenue from county?
Do you want me to pull
I don't remember
that
what it stood for.
estimate?
Albert knows. It's,
Where's Albert hiding at?
must be on this.
Okay.
It's like, legal, it's law enforcement,
It's something we don't get anymore.
So then is this a line item we should delete then?
Well,
We
we
will
still
when
have
it-
a number there for
Yeah.
18.
It will when we no longer are comparing the 17-18 actuals.
Yeah, effectively just drops off.
Thank you.
Okay?
Oh, I have one more question.
Yes, sir.
Transfers from airport, 8,376 budgeted, 40,8188 received to date, 0 for the new budget. Why?
Well, we do have 4,188 in there for year-to-date in December. That was to cover, they were short on their, revenue last year to cover their expenses, so that was to help cover their expense, and then they pay the general fund back. So,
Okay, that's, okay. But still, why 0 for this?
oh, for this year?
Yes.
At this point, they're actually, in black, they haven't, all their revenue has covered their expenses so far this year.
We're not having to loan them money, so they don't have to pay us back what we haven't given them.
Well, we'll debate that later. Thank you.
Mayor and council?
And I do have comments for mayor and council. This is Donna Pulling, I'm sorry. I respectfully suggest that due to the financial uncertainty of the coming year, that mayor and council voluntarily decline their $19,200 complimentary stipend. Most of the members are either retired or full-time employees and do not depend on this stipend for their living. We appreciate the time and effort council members give, and in no way is this meant as a criticism of their performance and value to the community. This can be reevaluated during next year's budget process. I also suggest that the $3,000 education line item expense be eliminated. You might also consider not renewing membership in the League of Cities. The membership fee is $7,156. This seems to be unnecessary expense this year since the city is already paying for a law firm for open meeting law training and other services that might be offered by the league. Sierra Vista decided last year to not renew membership in the league with no negative impact. Total savings would be approximately $30,000. That would be a great positive impact on another area such as parks, the pool, or the senior center.
Who was that from?
Ms.
Donna
Pulling.
Pulling.
Ms. Pulling. Oh.
Donna Pulling, sorry.
First of all, I have no personal financial interest in that one way or the other. My check already goes to charity every month, so that has nothing to do with it, other than the fact is that currently we operate under a charter that indicates what the council is paying. And some people on the council may have the ability to do without that money. Others may feel pressured that they need that money. And therefore, anybody on the council that wants to sign the back of their check and hand it back to the city as a gift is certainly able to do that. But for us, we, number one, take a charter amendment, which cannot be done until November, which is halfway, and wouldn't take effect until over halfway through the year. I think that I've said my piece, that if anybody on the council wants to give their money back, super, do it. If you don't, then don't. As far as, and I'll get you in just a second, sir, as far as the League of Cities and Towns, that, in my opinion, is a very important. It's not just legal fees, it's not just legal information, It's something that our clerk, our finance director, our city manager, myself, a number of people in the city use constantly. They are our lobbying arm. They're the ones that are up in Phoenix every day for us. I find it very surprising that Sierra Vista allegedly did not renew their contract with the league because Rick Mueller, their mayor, is on their executive board. So I find that very somewhat troubling. As far as the $3,000 for travel, I think that it's important that members of this council receive the training that they feel that they need, and that $3,000 is a small expense. Some of us are in a position where we go to the training that we pay for it ourselves. Others are not in that position, and they should not have to go without training because of that. And so that's my piece, Mr. Nichols.
Yeah, I found the newly elected officials training that they put together was very good, and it's something that everybody that's on the council should probably attend at one time or another. And as far as donating, we have the ability to do that, and I believe that we can earmark our donation. So it goes to whatever we choose. If I want to give my money back to the city, I can say, yeah, but I want it to go to this, that, or whatever. And so we have the ability right now to do that. And like the mayor said, it would require a charter change to do it otherwise.
Anybody else?
Yes. I agree with your comments on the League of Cities. However, on the issue of giving back our money, there's two ways to look at this. One, we can make a donation. We pay taxes, we pay Social Security, we pay Medicare, and then we give our money back to the city. It's a noble thing, and I think everybody should consider doing it. I would like to look at something a little bit different. During this crisis, you, according to the code and the charter, are authorized to govern by proclamation. This council is redundant under those circumstances. Why can't we, or can we, be furloughed as a council so that we're not paid, we're no longer on the payroll, and all of that money goes back to the general fund or to whichever fund is appropriate? And I would like to know if we can get a legal opinion from the lawyer as to whether or not that's a possibility.
The only way you could be removed from office, sir, is by dying or by being recalled.
I said furloughed.
And that's not an option.
Why not?
It's just simply not an option.
Can we ask the lawyer?
Sure.
Let's do that.
I think that even goes back to state, I think that even goes even in the ARS state statutes. I mean, any legal, any appointed, not appointed, any elected position. I don't know that you can be furloughed.
That's
I know that, yeah, that's what I was agreeing with you, yeah.
There's no harm in asking the question. Okay, let's do it. Because we don't, like you said, we do not know what economic impact this is gonna have on the city.
Right.
Every indication is it's going to be very severe, and if the Congress doesn't step up and help us out, and if the governor won't use any of the $360 million state surplus to help cities in rural communities, then we're gonna have to look long and hard at cuts to this budget. And that's one way of addressing a fund, but while we're in a crisis situation, you're quite capable of running the city by proclamation.
We'll have an answer for you then by tomorrow.
Thank you.
Is that something you want me to follow up on?
No, actually, we will have an answer tomorrow.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
the only thing I have on this is the fireworks that, come out of our budget. It was cut in half to 3,500. if there's any way possible somewhere to come up with maybe at least $1,500 more, so when they go out to bid on the fireworks, they can at least have $5,000. I mean, that's one thing that, is put on for the entire community. And of course, everybody comes, you know, 4th of July for family reunions and class reunions, and I mean, it's one of our biggest, events down here, and everybody just loves the fireworks. And I know that, you know, the firefighters go out, they try to get donations, which they just still do. But, again, you know, kind of hard times right now, and they may not be able to, you know, get donations from, the people that they've been getting them from. And I don't know, I just think it's something that we can do, and hopefully by then, you know, we'll all be ready to go out and celebrate, and it would just be nice to have just a little more. I mean, $1,500 is not a whole lot, but it can make a better firework display. That's my only request.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
along that same lines, if it's considered, is it possible to even to transfer it out of the Parks and Rec, event thing? I mean, there's $5,000 for the Christmas festival. I mean, you know, is it possible to maybe take some of that? Because they didn't even spend that much. I mean, we haven't got to that yet, but when we get to it, I'll bring it up again. Because they didn't even spend half of that, I don't think. So maybe that could be somewhere it could be shifted from, or.
Well, they didn't spend it because they had a benefactor that came through, or a couple of them
Right.
that came through. Chief, what did fireworks cost us last year?
Last year we did 6,000. Our firefighter union donated, I believe it was 1,000, and I think we got 1,000 from Freeport, I believe. Or it was about 5,500 or 6,000, somewhere around there. It's a better show with more.
Yes. And we'll be ready. We'll be ready to celebrate.
Maybe.
Yeah.
No, we'll be ready.
There's a lot of people that are, saying social distancing may go on all summer long. So there is also that possibility that we won't be able to have fireworks this year.
Well, a lot of tourists didn't get that memo, because there's still crowding the streets.
That's coming from the federal government.
What is the, thought on Ms. Klein's request for $1,500 extra?
Say that again?
I'm sorry?
What just, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Ms. Klein is requesting that we add $1,500 to this budget for fireworks.
I agree.
Agreed.
Are we voting, or what are we doing?
No.
You can't.
we
I know, I was gonna say, I was confused.
We're discussing.
But-
Yeah,
but-
oh, okay. I'm
No,
sorry, I
but
was,
people can say I agree or
oh,
not.
okay, I was like confused there for a minute, sorry.
Ms.
So I
Hanson?
guess I don't understand. Your comments is you wanna take our pay away. We don't wanna go to the league, which we decided that we do wanna do that. And now we wanna add. So what are we doing?
Giving back to the people. Oh, sorry.
There's crickets.
Yeah.
I don't care one way or the other.
I mean, if we did, like I said, if we did a shift from other funding that, and, you
Then
know,
why don't we wait?
that's why I said I'll
Yes,
address it
why don't
again.
we wait until then to decide on it?
Oh, we're not.
Yeah.
We're just discussing it.
Okay.
We're not voting on it.
I don't think we're gonna be having 4th of July.
I don't either.
I don't either.
Well,
No,
then if we
We
don't,
will have 4th of July.
I mean,
Okay.
but I don't think it's gonna be the way it usually is.
Yeah.
Right, but if
Well, we
not,
don't know. We,
but if
And there are
we
a
don't use it,
lot of
then
unknowns.
it just stays in there. I mean, it's just like other line items.
I agree with your, I don't agree with the $1,500. I do agree with your statement that it just stays there. You know, you plan for what you wanna do, and if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out, but you still plan for that, so. So, when the time comes, for right now, let's put the $1,500 in there. And then we'll remember when we get to that other budget, in probably day after tomorrow, maybe tomorrow, maybe tomorrow, then, we can remember to shift it. Okay? Remember, this is a tentative budget. We'll be going through this. So, and Carrie's probably writing this in red. I see that, yeah.
You'd like to see what she's writing.
All right, anything else? Okay, let's move to city manager.
There isn't anything too remarkable in this budget. I will point out that, I did increase the education and training. That was allowed in this budget. However, there are several expenses that actually aren't happening again. So this budget is a savings overall from your previous year's budget.
And finance director, a proposed raise is not in this budget.
No. No, a proposed increase is not in this budget for the city manager. We'll probably talk a little bit more about pay disparity. I don't feel that my position is one of the most important positions to adjust for pay disparity at this time.
Well, it would be based on your review though, it's not really a pay disparity issue.
So then based on.
Well, it is a pay.
In my heart, it is a pay disparity issue. And I would be inclined to suggest that those funds be used to smooth out some of the other disparities on your grade plan, rather than take the increase myself.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm
Okay.
sorry I'm putting you on the spot that
That's
way,
okay,
but
it's fine.
good, now's the time to do that. So,
Okay.
Ms. Jackman.
So then, were the professional fees, there was none budgeted, but some was spent, but, I'm assuming even before you were here. So you will pay your own professional fees, is that technically what that states then, or what?
The previous professional fees was for Mr. Coffin, so.
My dues and subscriptions are still in there.
Oh, okay.
We're definitely not budgeting for another city manager, Anything else? Finance?
Yeah.
Ms. Jacqueline?
All the way at the bottom, credit card fees and fees fund management, you're jumping, the fees fund management, it's jumping from 5,000 to 10,000, and the credit card fees is 13,000 to 10,000. Does that mean we're keeping a balance on credit cards? Is that where we're being charged fees, or?
No, that's for people to be able to use their credit card to make payments. It's those fees that the bank charges us to take credit cards for like sewer garbage payments and all that kind of.
What's the, is that the fees fund management?
Fees fund management, that's just the bank fees.
Ms. Klein?
On salaries, it looks like they've jumped a little bit. Are we increasing employees or?
No, actually, the salaries decreased. We had, no part-time person anymore, and then the full-time salaries decreased a little bit. Overall, it's decreased, almost 40,000.
Are you looking at the center of the band?
Okay, so, well, that was my question, but we have 5 full-time, correct? But there's no more part-time.
your, final review.
Yes, Ms. Coronado's review is way past due. And we know that it's just been, things keep coming up and it keeps being put on the back burner with her knowledge and, in fact, in a couple cases, her request. But her review is coming up, and so we would typically expect a salary increase with a good performance review. So I'm speculating that she would receive one, and therefore we need to budget for a salary increase.
I agree, because even if, well, as Ms. Klein said before, even if we, it's there, if we don't use it, it still sits there. But if she does get an increase and we don't have it in there,
Well, then she doesn't get an increase if it's not in.
that's what I'm saying.
It's fine.
And just for clarification, when was the last salary increase?
Oh my. I want to say 2016, 2016 maybe? Might even been 15, I'd have to go back and look.
I think it was 16.
And then you'll notice the other increases in that budget are related to election expenses because we'll be in an election year.
Nothing else? Community development?
We did add a part-time position to community development. This part-time position would assist both the building inspector and the fire inspector, and then assist Nina Williams with some of the duties that she's taken on due to lack of part-time clerk in that department.
So what about that position that was okayed on our last budget for building inspector? Is that ever gonna get filled? There was a position that was, I mean, it's on your thing here, building inspector. I guess not, but there had been, last budget I thought we had filled another position to help Joe.
There wasn't one budgeted, there's a zero in both full-time and part-time salaries from the last budget, it must not have survived.
They have accounting, helping out.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
Yeah, I think this is a valuable position that needs to be filled, and I really believe that down the road we'll see results from this. I know that the building inspector seems to be overworked, and I believe he could certainly need some help, but this is one place that community development director could step in, particularly with items like code enforcement. You know, we have code enforcement issues. Biggest issue I have is code enforcement in the Gulch. And maybe we can get some help with that.
Could you list again who they're helping? Who that person's helping again? Could you list?
Oh,
building
yeah,
inspector?
the building inspector and the fire inspector. Now, it did not result in an increase in the budget for community development, however, because we would decrease our need for contract services, but we have decreased our need for contract services. I didn't want to eliminate them altogether because the folks at the county planning department are pretty valuable in specific circumstances, so it's nice to have access to them.
And I would indicate, Ms. Higgins, that when the fire marshal's position is active, which it will be soon, then the fire marshal will be actually doing some code enforcement that right now Joe is having to do. So that will free him up on things like weeds abatement and some of the
Joe?
other fire.
Yeah, well, you know, the issue we have is a little more complex than that, the issue that we're having in the Gulch.
Right, I understand.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, Mr. Ward would then have more time to concentrate on some of those other issues.
Well, it may not just be a time issue, it may be something else.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am?
And so for the animal shelter expenses, is this the amount that was previously in the police department budget, or am I wrong?
Well, it's been, as you can see, this line item was budgeted since, 2017, 2018 is a continuing.
They still, the police department still has an animal, expense, animal control expense, I think. But this is for the Friends of the Animal Shelter to operate the shelter, that's mostly what that's for.
And we're increasing that?
Just prepared.
Anything else? Admin and general government.
Can you explain, under transfer bed tax, what is that exactly? Because it's zero.
We don't use it anymore. It used to be, we would receive the city sales tax and then figure out how much of that was from the bed tax and then transfer it to the visitor center or the transient room tax fund. The auditor said there was no point in doing a transfer, to just record it directly into the visitor center.
So eventually are all these that are zero straight across gonna disappear?
Well, it used to be.
I don't just mean here.
Yeah, it used to be the same with wastewater and streets. We did it the same way, that portion was transferred over. But like the airport and the bus, that wouldn't go away if there wasn't enough revenue, coming in for the bus, the general fund would cover it, so we'd have to make a transfer. Same thing with the airport, it's just for revenue shortages.
Okay.
That was my question about the airport. Why are you, how do you arrive at 8978 transfer to airport?
Oh, that was, yeah, the airport budget, they were short on revenue over what the expenses they were claiming, so that covers their shortage.
For what year?
The upcoming year, the revenue that we budgeted for this upcoming fiscal year was short by $8,978 over the expenses that they're saying they're gonna have. So that's what that transfer is.
Hopefully we'll take a look at that tomorrow, it's on page 72.
Okay, I'm still a little confused, but thank you. And then the general,
Ms. Klein, I'm sorry, I thought you were finished.
got one more question.
Okay.
GF Internal Services, that amount is 14.7%, which is, like I said, higher than 9 to 10. Can you tell me why?
So the internal services cost is based on the expenses for all of the departments. So we take the total of all the departments and then divide it into the expenses for just this department. And that comes up with their percentage of the cost. And that's how we do it for each department. We take the entire expense for the city, so it's a ratio of the entire expense of the city to that department.
Not to that department's budget.
Right.
Okay.
Percentage of that,
Makes sense.
for that department, it's the percentage of the total.
Yes.
Right, they're, right.
Ms. Hanson,
Yes.
well, I was calling you. Did you have anything else?
No.
Okay, Ms. Klein.
Okay, so, just to, get further clarification, from Mr. Pollock's question, on that 8,978 transfer to the airport here, you're saying it was because they were short, but yet when we went in the revenue end of it, you said that was zero because they weren't.
That's two, it's
Yeah,
two separate
years.
things and two separate years. So if they had gone over last year, they would have repaid us this year. This is saying if you go over next year, this is the amount that will have to come from general government to cover what you'll be short. Then they will be responsible to repay in the next year. This number relates to the income on page 72.
Yeah, it was basically to make the airport's budget balance because they were short on revenue. This
But
But you said they weren't short on
Not last year.
But yeah, last year, this is talking about the upcoming year. The revenue that we're expecting them to get is less than the expenses that they're budgeting for. So this is covering that gap. Whereas the other one is repaying from the previous year when they were short, actually short on revenue and are paying the general fund back for.
I think it'll become clear
Yeah, this is a
tomorrow.
projected,
Yeah, I
this
think
is a
it'll become
projected
clear
show.
tomorrow when we talk about the airport.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, when we talk about the airport budget, I think it'll be.
one's actual, one's projected.
Right.
No, I understand that.
What actually happens.
You get explained to me. Anything else? Personnel? Put on.
I don't suppose there are too many questions because this, again, is a decrease overall in the budget, though we did plan for recruitment and education by adding some additional funds there, as well as advertising.
I brought this up before other budget years, and so I just, phones again, on this, what does that $500 cover? What does that reflect?
That's her cell phone. Her cell phone.
So that's
Verizon.
one cell phone?
Yeah, it's like 40, somewhere between 30 and 50 a month. So it's one cell phone.
Is it typical accounting procedures for each department to pay for their own recruiting versus it in one lump sum in personnel, or personnel's budget to be paying for the recruiting of our employees?
Yeah, that's where it's kind of gotten confusing because it's hard to tell, how much every department's gonna be to put it into personnel, whereas each department themselves can probably have an idea of what their recruitment costs are gonna be. It's kind of, for the most part, it's been charged to the individual departments, except for maybe some advertising.
Newspaper and, there was also postings on, I believe, LinkedIn. There were a couple different sources.
Yeah, it's just because we're actually mixing it. It just seems it would be so much cleaner to take every department's recruiting budget and put it all into personnel and let it come out of personnel. It just seems so much cleaner to me. And I know I've brought it up once before, but I'm just bringing it up again, that unless there was a good accounting reason for it, or an ease of use reason, then I did want to bring that up. So, Ms. Coleman, you were ready?
Noted.
No, I thought you were gonna,
No.
I thought you had a great argument.
It just seems it would be much easier in one account.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is human resource, we're gonna hire you, blah, 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 instead of, well, we're gonna take from this line, this line, this line.
Well, that way the personnel director can actually watch that budget and
No.
know, and also the chiefs as an example, and all this don't have that part of the headache, because I could be wrong, but I'll bet you every recruiting, they're having to go to the personnel director anyway and discuss where and how and all this other sort of stuff, so it just seems easier if we just strip all of these out and put it into her budget. So it's a thought.
Yes, and it might not have a dollar for dollar
Yeah.
impact though, because then it will be part of the overall expense that then gets divided out, yeah. So it'll still show up as a DF, internal services charge,
Okay,
if not a line item.
okay,
Okay.
thank you. Legal services.
This is based on your current agreement with Ledbetter Law.
Questions? City magistrate? I'm sorry, no,
Not quite.
I'm jumping here.
Water system.
Water systems.
I did not ask Jesus to come tonight to discuss this. If we want to save it until he's here, that's fine. Otherwise, this is the reservoir and the pump that supplies the reservoir in addition to the entire fire suppression system that's fed at reservoir.
It's actually dropped a couple $100 for some reason, so. Does anybody need to discuss this with Mr. Harrell? Or can we just go ahead and, okay? Information systems, IT.
So it's pretty straightforward. We do use professional services and contract services in addition to some subscriptions and dues for our information system.
And it's actually a couple $100 less. Thank you, Ms. Landers. Hobbies.
Please, we got a hot seat.
Come defend yourself.
Oh, okay. We're gonna put you here, so you have a microphone.
I was happy to stay back there.
I understand that. But now you're really close. Better. So, as I presented at your last council meeting, the employee council did adopt a grade plan for city employees, and the group of employees who are experiencing disparity, annual wage disparity as a group were the police officers. So this does reflect the $1 an hour raise for officers, as well as a raise for dispatchers. So there is an increase to wages in this budget.
It does not reflect raises for the chief, deputy chief, or one of the supervisors, just the dispatchers and the officers, and one supervisor.
When you say it doesn't reflect, that means you're not getting a raise?
Correct.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
You have 12 police officers now, do you have anyone,
Actually, it's 11. I gave that number to Carrie, it was a mistake on my part, it should be, on that front sheet, yeah, it should be 11 instead as well.
Or the way things go, that could have been yesterday.
well, yeah. Excuse me. Is there, anyone, are you recruiting now, or do you have anyone that's going to be recruited, or any recruitment within this period that has been nailed down?
Well, we have one person that's in background right now, we're always recruiting. If there's an opening, we're always recruiting. Sometimes that's, we're more successful with that than others, but, we do have one person who's in the background right now. So,
And does the salary include, let's say, one or two positions that you might be recruiting, or might be getting in?
No, so that reflects, correct me if I'm wrong, that reflects 15 police officers, or 15 police officers total. Currently, we are one short, we have one vacancy. We have two that are graduating the academy, Wednesday. And then, this one that's in background will be the 15th, so if we don't lose anybody else, we won't be hiring anybody else. But if somebody leaves or retires or moves on, then we'll be recruiting again.
Yes, the impound position, impound custodian?
Yes.
Is that a full-time position?
No,
So is it served by a person that maybe does another job too? I mean, is that a position that could be done? Like is that necessarily a needed half-time, full-time position, or is that a position that can be done by another half-time person? Does that make sense?
no, it's, and actually, it's really, you should be getting more hours than we do. He's a retired police officer, sergeant, who came back several years ago, and he's been running both evidence and, the impound lot. He does the auctions for the city. It is it's a busy job.
So is it an hourly or is it a salary?
No, he's a part-time, 19 and a half hours a week.
So it's not. He also does things like, when we get new vehicles, he is the one that does the title.
Yes, pretty much for the city.
Yeah, for the entire city.
I've got a question on
Yes,
personnel. So we've got 4 full-time dispatchers, 1 part-time. And then we are utilizing both, records as dispatch as well, so that we have, so that would be 3 part-time dispatch?
So we have 3 full-time dispatchers, 1 part-time, and then the 2 records clerks are full-time. And they are taking turns being the 4th full-time dispatcher.
Okay, well, that was my question. How were they being used?
Yeah, so technically there's 5 of them now that are full-time. The 2 records clerks and the 3 dispatchers are full-time.
Mhm.
Between the 5 of them, they make up the 4 full-time dispatchers needed for dispatch. And then when our part-timer is available, she picks up, typically on a full week, 7 days, it takes 4 dispatchers, 40 hours a week, and 1 part-timer, I believe 8 hours, to make up the full 7 days. And so that's usually falls to the part-timer. When the part-timer's unavailable, then one of the other records clerks or a dispatcher who's, comes in for overtime because of that shortfall.
Okay, so then our records clerks are not pulling regular dispatch duty?
They are. They're taking turns pulling the full shift of dispatch.
As well as now how is that working with their records? And
So they were part-time, the 2 of them up until recently. And they were, they're now full-time, and they're still getting, more time in records. Just some of their time has to be spent in dispatch also.
Anything else on the personnel part? Let's go to page 2. Contract services, chief.
Oh. What do you mean page 8? Which page?
Page
Are you on
25.
Okay, that's okay, thank you. Yeah.
I knew what I meant, not what I said.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't remember what it is.
Contract services is E3.
Is what?
The
E-fleets,
Oh,
the
okay.
vehicles that were approved earlier this year will not be delivered until next year, or next fiscal year.
Well, calendar year. Yes.
Oh.
Hopefully, some of the patrol cars will be available, by end of August, fingers crossed. The shutdown and this COVID, really put a slowdown. We do have VIN numbers, I'm told, and that's a good sign, and they were slated for production early. Ford's supposed to start producing again on May 1st, so we are already in the queue, so that's a good sign for us to have those sooner than later. So that's, keep our fingers crossed. Hope that works out.
So I have a question on the fleet, I guess more of a memory refresher. These are patrol cars. So on an average evening, do you guys put, what, 80 to 100 miles on the cars patrolling? And that's the average of most police stations, if they're patrolling?
Honestly, I could tell you that number, I don't have it with me right now, but it might be that, it might be a little higher.
Could you write it, because I'm just curious, what's the life expectancy then of those patrols? Because if you're doing 80 to 100 a night,
Well,
or a shift, is that a shift, not a night, or a
Right.
shift?
so that's probably a little bit higher. I'll tell you that the last, the expeditions that we have, some are still being used right now. They're 10 years old, and they have, some 120 plus thousand miles on them. In my opinion, their life expectancy ended 2 years ago, but yet we're still relying on those. That's what we have. Hopefully we can put those to auction, here come September.
Yeah, they're not super high mileage, you know, it's around 1,000 a month, and those figures. But police vehicles, they get rode hard.
Well, and it's the idle time as well. There's a lot of idle time that they get because there's electronic equipment that has to keep running. That becomes a challenge as well.
Your vaccines, do you, generally, I mean, you guys have $1,000 budgeted, but it seems like you guys haven't had your vaccinations.
I don't remember if that started out of the fire. We all had to go get
Yeah, I think
tetanus
so.
shots or something.
Yeah.
I think is what started that. But then, so that's another one that comes up. I think we had covered the ACO, which, as was mentioned earlier, the animal control officer falls under my budget. And there's a vaccine that they're required to get in that position. And it's rather expensive. And I think we got the county health department, I think, to help us cover the cost of that for D. So long as we keep D, I think we're good. But if we have to bring on another ACO, there's a significant cost for the rabies vaccine.
Yeah.
It's like $3,000.
It's expensive.
Yes.
So then that only covers just the ACO.
Yes. Because typically the rest of us get our vaccines, our shots. We get our shots from our primary care physician, so, yeah.
As long as you don't bite anybody, you're good, right?
Just kidding. I have another question. RICO auction expense.
Yes.
You didn't have a RICO auction this year, or you haven't had one yet. How many auctions do you do? I mean, you guys used to have quite a few auctions, and
So typically we have a RICO auction every year and we have a city auction every year. But it depends on what we have. So much like the county attorney, the city, the police department, I'm not gonna recommend us have an auction if we only look at 3 or 4 cars in the lot. Because the time that it's gonna take us to put that auction on and advertise it, prepare for it, we're not gonna get a return on our investment there. We're gonna lose money. We never want to lose money. Breaking even is one thing, but we don't want to lose money. So we will hold off till the next year to try to get that. Now, this year, with the new cars coming in, my hope is that we'll have several, police vehicles that we'll be able to send to auction and create some revenue there. But that happens on occasion, and that money is reimbursed from the auction. We spend it, but then it's reimbursed back somewhere down the line, from the auction itself. Because it's a county's auction, not ours.
Okay. I have one last question. Animal control expense.
Mhm.
You guys have allotted $1,000, but it says you've only spent 346 to date, which may be a little higher because that was December.
Right.
That includes traps and leashes and stun gun and whatever, right?
Whatever Dee comes and says she needs, this is, the hope is to have a fund there enough to cover. Sometimes there's things that are more expensive than others.
Well, I'm
traps,
just curious about the traps because I've heard complaints that there's not enough traps.
Right.
And I mean, there's a scuttlebutt going around that she doesn't have what she needs, but yet we have money sitting here.
So originally the traps had gone to the shelter, and they were putting those out, and that was kind of coming from them.
Mhm.
I think there's a shortfall there, and so, again, whether or not we start putting traps out again, the traps typically come from the shelter, though they don't necessarily come from Macy.
So then that would also include like the telescope poles for leashing and that type of stuff then?
Yes.
And she's fully stocked on that then?
Well, like I said, that number I think has increased a little bit since then, but, yeah.
It was 669 in 1819.
Okay.
She has what she's asked for, though.
Yeah, I guess that's,
I think so, yes.
Yes.
okay.
Ms. Klein?
I've got a couple of questions. You were talking about the older Tahoes that we have. What's the mileage on them?
So the older Expeditions,
Or Expeditions?
there's some of those range anywhere between, I'm trying to remember last time we checked, some weren't as high as they look to be. When you look at them, you think there's about 300,000 miles on them, but there's maybe 110. And then I wanna say they go up to as high as 140, but I haven't looked at that in several months, so that's a best guess recollection.
Okay, and then, so on the fleet that we've got budgeted for 71, is that an increase from what was originally talked about?
So that is a slight increase, but that also covers, for that contract services, that also covers a few other things besides, I think Stillman still comes out of that line item. So there's a few other things besides just the fleet. The copier, yes, Rico.
And that's coming out of the E-fleet?
No, contract services has E-fleet as well as Spillman.
Oh, in addition to?
Yes, yes.
Okay, and then, there's an increase in uniform allowance, clothing allowance. Can you break that down per?
So, what's happening is, as you can see, we've always used, we've repeatedly gone over that, and the reason is because our turnover is so high. We have an officer who, works for us, whether it's 5 years, 1 year, or 20 years, they get $1,000 at the beginning of the year. They spend that $1,000 for uniforms, and they leave, in December. That money's been spent, we hire a new officer, send them to the academy, we give them another $1,000 to, get their, equipment supplies ready for the academy, and then we're behind, because, we only budgeted for the exact amount of people that we have, and that number doesn't always, exactly flow that way. If we hired, we had a year where we lost, several officers, in 1 year. As we replace those, if some of that clothing allowance is already spent, the new officer comes in and still gets their $1,000 for their initial purchase, and so that number goes up. I also included in there this time, because they are our employees as well, but the dispatchers, to actually include in there to have them covered for their polo shirts 2 a year. Our volunteers, we do have several volunteers that we take care of, or take care of us, I should say, and to make them part of the environment that they're working in. I think it's important to recognize them as such.
Okay, so then what do dispatchers get as far as clothing allowance?
So they don't get a clothing allowance, but they get that, that number affords me the ability to go and order them polo shirts or a job shirt, for example, that's got the name of the city, the police department's logo on it as part of their uniform, if you will.
Okay, so then, question. Here, I guess fairly recently, didn't we have an officer that worked for like a week or so and then left? Could that, because it was so quick, couldn't they be made to reimburse the city back for?
So we had an officer who didn't complete the 2 years, and it's my understanding he paid his, fee associated with that, if I remember correctly. The fee for this contract was paid. We had another officer who, cadet, who didn't complete training, and that was not the same as being, as leaving for another agency. He did not successfully complete, and so, there was no, if it was up to him, he'd be here working right now. It wasn't him quitting or leaving us for another agency or for more money. It was a different scenario.
But that employee did not have to reimburse for, clothing and
No.
equipment that they bought? How come?
They didn't willingly leave.
Well, but if the clothing expense was put out,
Well, I'm just
I
saying.
mean, on the city's part, and then they, for whatever reason, didn't make the cut or whatever, we're out that money and we don't, that's,
It's not what the contract
That-
says.
Right, but that's, the contract doesn't indicate that. It's just like if we had an officer for 2 months and we fired him, we wouldn't then fire him and say, and give us a check for your uniform. It's the contract was to keep them here from going to another department and us losing that $1,000.
okay.
It was for voluntary, voluntary leave.
Well, but they're still, voluntarily or not, they're still not employed and, I mean, if the expense has been put out and it's not been, but a very short time, I don't know, I mean.
Well, we can certainly discuss that but presently the contract doesn't allow that.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
What do the cops use, DOC for?
We have a inmate at the station 4 days a week.
What do they do?
Everything, maintenance, not maintenance necessarily, but minor maintenance. Change the washer out on the sink if it needs it, but buff the floors, wax, vacuum.
So they're
clean the
custodian?
bathrooms. Custodian, yes.
Anything else? Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Harrisburg. Chief Castillo, come on down. How's your day been so far?
Yeah.
Good. Good. All right, let's start on page 28.
So this budget also shows an increase in salaries. There were increases in the fire department back when the minimum wage increased. So I put a little cheat sheet out in front of you so you can kind of see where that happened. The chief did have an additional request for an increase. However, it would have made a pretty substantial change to the way that the city budgets.
Could you repeat what you just said?
He did put in an increase, he did initially request an increase with his budget. However, it would have made a substantial change in the way that the city budgets.
In the budget, what I did request is, trying to look out for the guys, I increased, I put in a budget for $1.50 a raise for all employees within the department. Like Teresa says, with that, I guess it could increase the, budget pretty significantly.
Okay, so then all employees are not going to get any kind of, other than these few that are listed?
These are the increases that happened on January 11th.
We had to bring our current firefighters that were under the minimum wage, and the minimum wage changed to at least bring them up to minimum wage.
Okay, so there was no increases for them.
So anyone who was making less, so anyone whose annualized salary was based on a calculation that used less than $12 an hour, their calculation was increased to use the $12 an hour. Though $12 an hour times 2,080 hours does not equal their annual income. So it's a calculation that comes up with the firefighter's income. And that annualized amount was on the grade plan from your last meeting. So a firefighter EMTs can annually anticipate $39,624. So those were increased based on the increase to the minimum wage. Then these other positions were also increased to reflect an overall adjustment in the department so that, for example, a paramedic wasn't making the same as an EMT. So that employee had $1 an hour raise.
But we are still substantially lower than money around us. So therefore, it's gonna end up costing us anyway, because we're gonna continue to lose people, and we're gonna continue to have to put money out to train new people to come in. So it's gonna catch 22. It seemed that it might be easier to alleviate if we would do the money up front and tighten the belt in a budget, just to get these guys up to a decent rate. So we're not losing them to these other things, and again, paying for more training, and paying for the turnover, and paying for the inexperience, and then paying for the on-job training. I mean, it just seems to make more sense to me, that if we put the money out front during budget for the wages, we may not take it in the shorts in the end when everybody jumps ship and runs to Sierra Vista or runs to the fire station that pays, or that pays even more. Right. I'm just saying, I don't know.
Well, I don't think either of the chiefs would argue with you there. Yeah, I don't think either of the chiefs would argue with you there. But as I pointed out with the grade plan, actually the pay disparity falls more to the police department than to the fire department based on annualized salaries at this time.
So that's why the police officers got $1, all of them got $1 an hour increase?
It helped. It didn't bring them into parity with the firefighters. They're still about another $1 an hour shy of even coming in line with the firefighter EMTs.
Okay, when I looked at the thing that you gave us at the last meeting, I was a little confused on how some of them were classified. Now, you said you got that from, where was it, Minnesota, Michigan, where?
We used a couple of resources. One of them was a free resource through the Office of Budget and Management for the state of Minnesota, which handles the pay equity, Minnesota's pay equity requirement. And we can get you a copy of that document if you'd like it. We also compared that to a study that the city paid for. And Joelle and Chief Castillo, Chief Achave both had copies of a previous pay equity study. Then this was reviewed by the employee committee. and they made adjustments based on recommendations from department heads. So the final document was not based solely on one or the other of those things. It really had 3 parts to it.
Okay, well, I was just wondering as far as when they went in for firefighter classification, because even Sierra Vista or Fry Fire, they have, their firefighters do one thing, this is their one job. And then they also have, the medical unit that goes, and this is their one job. Here, they don't really have a choice, they have to do it all. They have to do the structural fire, they have to do the EMS, they have to do the wildland fire. It's a little more complex here because they have to do it all, where in other, like I said, even just down Fry Fire, they have one job, and that's it. And
Yeah.
that's why they like to, and I'm sure Chief can tell you, that's why when they're recruiting, they hit Bisbee, because Bisbee is so multi-versed in everything, where with them, if they go and get hired by them, they focus on one job solely, and that's it.
Yeah, so this was not based on one job. This would have been based on the position description that was in the pay study. And again, this was reviewed by your employee committee, and the grades were adopted by the employee committee. So Joelle didn't create them, I didn't create them. Completely vetted.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
On, well, not on, can we go to the,
Page
yes.
29?
29. Mhm.
Okay, first of all, anybody else on page 28? No, all right, shoot.
Okay, looking at clothing. Okay, the budget is still the same. Actual is, actually pretty low. So, my question is then, what do, just like I asked Chief Chavi, what do the employees get per person for clothing allowance?
Our guys get $750 per firefighter a year.
Okay, why is there such a difference, Ms. Coleman, between police and fire?
Well, they have 2 classes of uniform. They also have turnout gear, which would be different.
Yeah, this year we added an item of turnout gear. The fact is, when we're starting doing some requirement, there are a lot of guys that left our department, that gear is available, and sometimes it doesn't fit properly to some employees, or it's too old. So we had to buy that, and it was coming out of, it was our operational expense, we just didn't have nothing for turnouts. Right now, we just hired 3, and, well, another, we have 4 employees, and some of the firefighters that we have, the 3 of them that start, we do have some gear for them, but they are gonna have to, some of them are gonna have to be upgraded to some newer stuff. So when this new budget, passes, and that's what we'll pick on when we give them some gear. But we also, come up with, if they do leave, don't give us 2 years, but then that individual has to buy back that gear.
Right.
So, if that was never done before, and we found out that we're actually, losing money, we're having turnout gear that we can't use, so now that the employee has to at least give us 2 years of it, to purchase that gear back.
Right, and I think that's why I questioned it before, because I know that, that is something that the fire department has to do, that they have to pay back, if they leave within those 2 years. And there should be a difference between turnout gear and uniform, but, I guess the turnout gear, well, they have to, they have to have it anyway. Where their uniforms, that's what they have day in, day out. Given, some of the calls that they respond to, uniforms are disposed of because of the type of call or whatever. And if they've used, let's say they've met their 750, and there is clothing that, or their uniforms that are, just, not destroyed, but damaged or whatever in a call, then they have to take that out of their personal budgets to replace.
Yeah,
Even
for the
if
most
it's-
part, what the guys are buying, you know, they get the pants, boots, the shirts, of course, all the winter gear. We also do improve it for the flashlights, or just anything that has to do with the job uniform wise. But for the most part, right now, with all this COVID-19 going on, everybody now comes to work in their civilian clothes. They're washing their clothes before they're leaving them at the station. Everybody has a change of clothes if we are exposed to any type of call. Like today, we had a transport service with flu-like symptoms, where the guys, as soon as they got back, they changed their clothes. We have an econ area. They don't come in the station, they change, and then everybody showers after the call. Everyone at home.
I was just questioning that if they've met, you know, if they get their, you know, allotted uniforms and they are ruined in a call, then there's no mechanism here for them to be replaced other than at their own expense.
If they go through their whole clothing allowance, yes.
And I just don't think that's quite fair. If they're ruined on a call and it has to come out of their
Usually,
pocket.
even if they did buy something, they were out of clothing allowance, I think it's been in the past where they'll take somebody else, if someone else doesn't use all their clothing allowance, they just supplement that, other ones to cover it, so they're not budgeted because of clothing allowance.
Do we replace, the, police uniforms if they get torn in a fight?
No.
And the police uniforms also, do they buy their own leather?
Yes.
Anything else?
Yeah, a couple questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Ambulance billing service, what does that exactly entail? Is that, it's 25, well, you have it allotted for 25,000. Is that a company that bills for you?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the contract service.
Wildland fires here listed expense, is that reimbursed when you go out on wildland fires or no, or how does that work? Because I know in the past we've talked about, well, we haven't got the money yet, we haven't got the money. Is that something that gets reimbursed or?
If we go out on fires, we do get reimbursed, it just depends on, you know, how big these fires are and how many agencies you're going, sometimes it takes several months in order to get reimbursement.
But is that what that is in there, the $20,000?
I believe so.
That's 67. And then out of city services, it's in the past, it's been 0, yet now you have it at 5,000.
We're
Yes,
signing
sir.
up people in Banyan Creek.
Okay, is that's Ken, I guess one last question I have. Last year, I remember we talked about, $100,000 was supposed to be put aside to buy an ambulance. Did that ever happen?
No.
So is it ever gonna happen? I mean, we had allotted $100,000 for you guys to get an ambulance.
One of the things we tried with the rate increase, with that extra mileage, was part of the vehicle costs for going for vehicles. I know now we are at the point where we're all gonna need a new medical unit soon. We've had several ambulances with over 200,000 miles. Had one that's constantly giving us trouble, breaking down, busting the fuel line, which flooded the cab with diesel fuel. We had to replace all the tank and all that stuff. And it spawned another leak recently, and it was fixed here again.
So is that money then still available, and are you gonna utilize it within this calendar year? Or
If
within
it's still
this
available, we might.
budget year, I should say?
It's possible we can find ways to do some type of lease purchases. Also, we also have a grant out right now, a FEMA grant for a pumper tender and a medic unit as well.
So is it not possible to get ambulances, same way that you're getting police vehicles? Do that fleet enterprise thing?
Yeah, I don't believe what they do.
So does the state not have something akin to that then, where you can get some kind of lease option? or get it to
Well,
where?
you would be able to lease, you could actually take on debt service.
Has that been looked
Well,
into?
actually lease. It would be a lease now.
Right.
Yeah.
So have we looked into that?
We've looked into, well, we've been checking several medic units, vendors, and checking out options to buy, if they do lease purchases or what they will charge per year. I'm actually, getting with, Whetstone's chief, they picked up a couple medic units, and I think for the 2 medic units, they paid, something like 30,000 or less a year for both of those. So we're trying to look at where they found those and a decent payment that we can hopefully get for the year to give them.
So I guess my next bonus question is, are we not gonna have the same conversation this time next year, me asking the same question? Or is it?
Not.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was what the whole gist of it was when we had it last year. And when we talked about it at the, strategic planning meeting, I mean, we've been talking about this, it just seems like it keeps rolling and rolling, when is it gonna come to fruition? Because, I mean, it's obvious we need it. And the sooner you act on it, the better deals you're gonna be able to get. I mean, this might even be an optimum time not to be.
Yeah, we have, that's where I just gotta find if there's money somewhere within our budget or somewhere within the city that we.
So then that 100,000 isn't there then still?
I have no idea.
Because we allotted it for you last year, so shouldn't it, so did we not? Did that not go through that we allotted $100,000, I think? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I believe that was based on the one.
I know, but it hasn't, we're not done yet.
Based on the 1.15 million in income,
Yeah.
which we have not reached.
So how much then do we have? How much have we reached in there?
It's back on the info page. And by the way, we do get,
Yeah.
that's as of December.
Mhm.
We do, just let me indicate real quick, we do get monthly, so we do have these figures you were asking for.
Mhm.
It won't be up to today, but it would be
Through the end
up
of
through,
March.
Right,
Yeah,
through
the end of
March.
be nice to have them. But, I mean, that's something, I mean, how many months do you have left? This is April, May, June, 2 months,
Mhm.
and then it's gone. And then there's no likelihood of it popping back into your budget. I mean, that's not to be snarky, but I mean, I'm just saying that there's kind of a push now, you know, that the opportunity's there. I would hope to think it would not be lost, considering the state.
And we've had, you know, there were several vendors,
Mhm.
we were talking to December and January, that were supposed to come and show us rigs as well, but since
Right,
all this, everything is shut down.
maybe they can do, virtual, you know, FaceTime the vehicles, but, I guess, and I'll try to end it on this, I know when we bought school buses, you know, we had the different vendors that we went to, and there was the lease option, and that seems to be a much easier and affordable way. Is that something that that can be utilized with that money? I guess I'm asking you, Ms. Cole, sorry.
Oh,
Yeah, sorry.
well, we haven't earned that income.
Right, that whole,
Yeah.
even with what we have, I guess.
Right, we haven't earned that income.
So are those lease options, is that a year, do you pay it by the year, or do you pay it by the month?
You pay it by the month under a contract.
Okay, that's why I was just
And
curious.
it's,
Multi.
there's a base mileage with
Right.
that, with ambulances.
Right,
That really is, it can be an expensive proposition.
Mhm.
I wanna make sure that she's finished. Are you-
yeah, I'm done.
Okay, Ms. Klein.
Okay, so my question was on lease purchases, cause we've always done lease purchases, for equipment. And whether the income was there or not, we've been able to do lease purchases. So, you know, I mean, I guess I question that the income is not there. As far as on-call vehicles, I know some of the on-call vehicles we have are actually old, you know, I know you just got yours replaced, but, you know, these were vehicles that we got under Chief Elkins 100 years ago, and they had many miles on them, they were seizure vehicles anyway. And then officers used them until they were, you know, just about done, and we're still using those. Isn't there some way that we can use the E-Fleet for on-call vehicles? Is that something that you've requested or looked at, or?
It's something that we can look at as the E-fleet vehicles for on-call vehicles. Yeah, the 2 vehicles that we got, were both, actually 3 vehicles were from the police department. They all both, I think all 3 of them have significant mileage, about 180,000 miles on them as well. And even the vehicle I just got, my new vehicle, was from the county that has about 170,000 miles on it as well.
Well, and I guess that's been one of my questions for many, many years, that it's okay for the fire department to have these vehicles with 100,000, 200,000, and it's okay. You know, I mean, everybody seems to think that there's not an issue with it, but, you know, we've got ambulances with 250,000 miles on them that are breaking down coming back from transfers, or they're not starting for calls. And everybody seems to be okay with it. Nobody seems to think that it's an issue.
I don't know how you can say that nobody thinks it's an issue. Nobody is against the fire departments.
I can go
It's a-
back and look at
Okay.
when we went to go out for a purchase on a ambulance, and the council voted it down.
Because of money.
We're not gonna
We can
get,
do
no,
these
we're not gonna get
purchases.
into a discussion.
Can I ask a real quick question?
You can ask a question.
It has to do, I guess, with the fleet. How come, and this is just me being green, how come the fact that, you know, the fleet service, everybody has on call? They're doing that, the fire station, the police station, and don't other department heads, aren't they on call? Or are they? I don't know, correct, in some places.
Oh, it's
So
for
if you're
example,
doing this
Matt
fleet,
needed to
right,
go
so if
out,
you're
yeah.
doing this fleet service, why aren't all on-call vehicles included in this? And not just the police, and I'm not just singling the police out, because that's who we, you know, okay, we went on-call for, that's the vehicles that we bought with this fleet service. Why aren't we doing that with all the on-call vehicles? Fire station, you know, any on-call that you need.
Yeah, it had to do with your current year budget, because the, public works and police were already on a program with the county to get vehicles, then it was a way to say, we already have this in the budget, it doesn't take us over budget this year to do that. The fire department has not been on that type of a program before, so there was no way to say, oh, we could redirect funds in this year's budget for that program. But it does not preclude you from budgeting that for the upcoming year. It was not part of the discussion because it wasn't.
So I guess maybe that's my question now,
Yeah.
why can't we not do that now, or is
No,
that too
there's
far?
no reason you can't do that.
Okay,
That's what we're here for.
right, so that's my, you know, that is something that needs to be looked at, because, again, this is, it seems like every time I turn around, and I've only been here 2 years, we're talking about the state of and shape of the vehicles in the fire department. And we've talked about how they need to be replaced and how there's a dire need for it. I mean, that was one of the reasons we designated that $100,000, and then nothing happened. And I think that's what, that bothers me, you know, we finally, you know, allocated it, and then here we are. And so I really think that's something that needs to seriously be looked at, for the fire department.
Yeah, and they did, take a serious look at it, and they have a pretty, substantial grant application in for 2 vehicles, so, we have budgeted for the, match for it, for those grants, and we'll get to those grants when we get a little further back into the budget.
Right. But then again, if the grant doesn't come through, not to be Betty
Right.
Buzzkill.
Yeah, I don't want to.
I know.
Anything else?
Debbie Downer.
But realistically,
Hearing
I-
nothing else?
Well, I do have one more question.
Yes.
I know, like, you were talking about, bringing some of the salaries up that were because of the minimum wage increase.
Yes.
What about those that are slightly above minimum wage, making $12.25 or $12.45 an hour?
Yeah, they were, so, someone making $12.55 went to the 13 for their calculation. $13.22 went to $13.50. $13.43 went to 14. $14.58 went to 15.
Okay, and that was because
Just
this individual went to a paramedic. That was the increase for the paramedic.
no, the increase was because the base calculation for a firefighter EMT had changed.
So what's their base? For somebody just hired tomorrow?
Yeah, yeah, $39,624.
Yeah, I'm talking per hour.
Actually, you can't do it per hour because it's based on 3,120 hours, some of which, and now I said that out loud, and I'm gonna, 3,120 hours. 364 of which are overtime hours, 2,756 of which are regular hours. So there's an hourly rate used in that calculation, but it doesn't come out to strictly like $12 an hour. Someone making $12 an hour working full-time makes $14,976 a year.
And we have a fireman that makes that much money?
Firefighter EMTs at the annualized rate makes $39,624.
That's with their overtime.
That's with their scheduled time. That's their 3,120 scheduled hours. Includes 364 hours of overtime, 2,756 hours of regular time. Comes out to $39,624 annually.
Okay, I'm sorry, so what was the overtime hours?
It's 364 overtime hours, 2,756 regularly scheduled hours for a total of 3,120 hours.
Okay.
And that's based on 13 4-week rotations.
Well, with the scheduled overtime, they'll only lose that overtime if there's a day off or vacation or something, because then that goes back to straight pay.
Right, but we'll
That
see
just
in your
doesn't even
new,
make sense
you'll
that it
see
would
in
go
your,
back.
yeah, you'll see in your new MOU though that we have made an adjustment. So when you have an opportunity to review the MOU at your fire union, you'll be able to see the change that we've made to make that less frequent.
Yeah, because if it goes back to just straight time, then you're going to have employees who are coming in sick and, you know, things like that, just so they can,
Yes, we did discuss that.
just so they can make overtime, you know, other, I don't know, I
Yeah,
just,
we did discuss that.
Anything else? Okay, I'd like a motion to recess out of here.
I move that we recess.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Those in favor of recessing until tomorrow at 5:30, signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We stand at recess.